Hello YouTube, this is Mahadev the Thunder Wizard. And we are in the grips of an interdimensional revolution. So I wanted to just briefly come on and I don't know why is my camera weird? Anyway, my camera was sweating or something like that. I wanted to talk about what is probably the strangest aspect about connecting with interdimensional beings. And what that has to do with the interdimensional warfare we are in. And we are in an interdimensional war. We are in an interdimensional war. And the only way that we are going to make it out of 3D is by poking holes into the dimensional barrier and connecting to higher dimensions and having that come into our dimension. You know, it's already something that happens naturally anyway, according to physicists. All of the light that we have, sunlight, electric light, it all comes from the fifth dimension. Gravity, electricity, magnetism, these are all properties that are fifth dimensional properties that are, I think, one property there. I think gravity and electromagnetism are one property in the fifth dimension, but when it comes into the third dimension, they split up seemingly into two different energies. So we already live in a dimension that gets a lot of its powers from higher dimensions. But in order for us to survive this shift that's coming, we have to bring in dimensional energy from the fifth dimension or above. So I wanted to talk to you about the strangest aspect of interdimensional beings. As you know, I have since about June, probably the middle of June, I have been in constant contact with beings from higher dimensions. And sometimes I don't really realize how crazy it sounds for me to say that. I suppose for the average person, they must think I'm totally bonkers. And if I am, I'm not aware of it. But the experience definitely has made me feel as though I've lost my mind numerous times. I'm currently, what's got me thinking about this is I'm currently in a sort of mini recovery stage, because probably was maybe a week ago, not quite a week ago. What is today? Today is Saturday. So maybe 5 or 6 days ago. So about 5 or 6 days ago, my higher dimensional friends came to me and said, because of the things that you've been doing, which happen to be doing interdimensional meditations with you guys live, they like that a lot. Apparently, when we do that, it makes huge dents in things. It apparently accomplishes a lot. I'm guessing here. That isn't a direct quote. That's my guess. So they said, as a result of what you've been doing, they said to me, we are going to give you an energy upgrade. And so they did. And I'm not going to share exactly what the message came to me was, because I don't see how it's helpful to anybody. Because it's so grandiose and so unbelievable. I just don't think it will accomplish anything except create confusion. But the essence of the message is having to do with me in a way that they're telling me, you know, here's who you are in higher dimensional existence. And So when they said, we're giving you an upgrade, they said, they basically, gave me a higher rank. Again, I'm not going to get into it, but they basically gave me a higher rank in whatever is going on in higher dimensions. And it was given to me by an extremely powerful being. Usually the beings that show up are very friendly, and they're very powerful, but they're very friendly and very warm. And when something official, like if they want to let me know something official about who I am and what I'm doing, these really hardcore beings will show up. By hardcore, all I'm saying is that they're incredibly powerful. And just getting just like a sentence from them, if they send information, however they do it in higher dimensions, whether they speak it, whether they think it, I don't know how they do it. But when a being of that power just simply, gives like what would be the equivalent of one sentence of information, the power behind that communication floors me. It is always it's like, how we would characterize God speaking. When God speaks, God said, let there be light. And all of a sudden, it's like that. Their communication is so intense that I don't have words for it, but I have to recover from it. And it becomes worse because if I try and figure it out, that's when I cause myself problems. Like it'll cause me physical pain. I'll end up with a physical injury if I try and wrap my mind around what this being has just said. So let me explain to you again my experience of the communications. As I've said before, when a higher dimensional being communicates to a lower dimensional being, that the lower dimensional being will experience the communication as though it's exploding from inside of them. If it's an energy, for me, it explodes from inside of my chest. If it's an emotion, it'll be an intense emotion. It won't be a human emotion, though. It's very important. It's not at all like human feelings. It's on a whole other level. And if it's a verbal communication, at least verbal in the 3D, what'll happen is a thought will erupt and sort of explode from within my mind. And oftentimes they will be the combination of the two, the communication in my mind as well as an energetic experience physically. And it is a very bizarre experience because you on the one hand, you think that you're thinking it, but at the same time, there's something happening on an energetic level that cannot be denied. And so it's very difficult to allow your brain to gaslight you out of it, because that's what happens. Your brain tries to gaslight you out of it and say, no, you were just thinking. Let me give an example of how this works. This is actually very common. For instance, people have been trying for centuries to find out where in the brain consciousness is, and they've never found it. And the reason why they've never found it is because consciousness is not in the brain. At best, again, coming from the perspective of science, at least some scientists, they're saying that at best, the brain is the processor. It's like a computer. It processes information. It translates information. But that's all it does. It doesn't create thoughts. It doesn't create emotions. It is just simply a unit that your body uses to process consciousness. I remember hearing about an experiment a long time ago. This had to have been 25 years ago. From one of my students, actually, who was explaining, again, people were trying to figure out, where does consciousness come from? And in one of the experiments, they, hooked somebody up with electrodes, and then they would, tell the person, make the decision to pick up a pencil. And so the person would then go to pick up the pencil. And the weirdest thing is they would pick up the pencil and the brain would then fire, which meant that the brain was really only recording the event. The decision to pick up the pencil wasn't coming from the brain. It was coming from somewhere else. And that completely threw them, because the assumption was that the thought to, send to the nervous system to pick up, my cup of decaffeinated tea here, they just assumed it was going to start in the brain first, and they wanted to measure how long it took for that electrical impulse to get to the body to move it. And the experiment, at least the way he described it, came up with something totally different. That's not how it works. So they didn't even know. Now they were worse off than before. I believe it was the same kid, was telling me about experiments with people who had a severed corpus callosum. In case you don't know what that is. You have a brain. Your brain has two halves. It has a right side and a left side. You've probably heard about this. The left side, connected to the right arm, is the logical, rational, and the right side associated, did I say that? The left brain with the right arm, the right brain with the left arm. The right brain is associated with creativity, thinking non-locally, more emotionally. And so the communication of the two halves of the brain is what gives us the ability to be creative and yet be able to drive down the road and be able to follow, the rules of the road. And so there's a bundle of nerves that go between the right side and the left side of the brain, and it's called the corpus callosum. And it allows the two brains to communicate with each other, the right side and the left side. This is why, for instance, women tend to have a larger corpus callosum, which is what allows them to multitask better than men. They can be on the phone, they can be making the shopping list, and they can be taking care of kids, and they can be doing multiple things at the same time. Men don't do that real well. They do one thing. They're the hunter. They go out. Don't talk to me right now. I'm writing. Don't talk to me right now. I'm putting my shoes on. Give me a second. I got to finish this first. Men, because they have a smaller corpus callosum, tend to only be able to focus on one task very intensely. Whereas the feminine brain tends to be able to do multiple things at once. We could argue maybe not as intensely. So in this experiment, these are with people whose corpus callosums were severed. And you could walk up to him. He said that in one case, they whispered into one ear, I don't know which one, it said, "Get up and walk to the other side of the room." So the person got up and walked over to the other side of the room, and then asked them, to both sides of the brain, "Why did you do that?" And they said, "Oh, I was thirsty." So that was interesting. They will come up with excuses to justify the things that they do. The brain will make up a reason. Walking to the other side of the room was because the person told them to get up and walk across the room. But they say, "No, I was thirsty." So that's that. The reason why that's significant is because that makes a lot of sense. Because when I'm in the presence of these higher dimensional beings and they communicate to me, my brain will, thoughts will emerge in my brain. And then my brain will try and tell me, "No, I meant to think that." And what I've come to believe now, based on this last upgrade, where an extremely powerful being came in basically gave me a sentence, worth of information. I was told some other beings came in and said, we're going to give you an upgrade. Get ready, here it comes. And then a huge being came in and basically said a sentence of information. And it was, the energy behind it was very intense. My brain came up with a sentence. And I'm not sharing it with you because it's so unbelievably grandiose that it's just, there's no purpose in it. There's no purpose in me telling you about it. It's something I have to digest and understand what the hell that's supposed to mean. What the hell am I supposed to do with that? And that's been a very interesting ride. And the intensity of it, I had to sort of pull back from everything because I'm having a mini sort of meltdown, intellectual meltdown over it. And my body, I'm having a little bit of pain in my body as a result. But what I've come to realize is that, and as I'm talking to you now, they're saying, yes, that's exactly right. I can feel them. What I'm realizing is that the concepts that they communicate to us are higher dimensional concepts. And we don't have the ability to understand them. I wish I had a diagram here I'd like to show you, but just to give you an idea. In the third dimension, we have 8 points of reference. I want you to think of, maybe I can use this RUNE box. All right, so it's a tiny box, but imagine this was a square box, right? So you've got 8 points of reference. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4 on the bottom. And then you've got 4 on the top. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now imagine this was taller. It would be a box or a rectangle. And within that rectangle is the third dimension. So it's 8 points of reference, right? Got it? See it in your mind? 8 points of reference creates 3-dimensional reality. We can go up, we can go down, we can go backwards, we can go forwards, and of course we can go diagonally in circles, but we're still in 3D, 8 points of reference. So each time you go up in a dimension, the points of reference double. Now, as I understand it, there really isn't a fourth dimension because time is the fourth dimension. But if we were to go up to a fourth dimension, instead of 8 reference points, 4 on the top, 4 on the bottom, there would be 16. Be double. There'd be 4 on the top, 4 on the bottom, and then there would be 4 on the side and 4 on the other side. And we can't comprehend it. I can tell you the numbers, but you can't comprehend it, neither can I. We can only, vaguely point at it. So that's the fourth dimension. The fifth dimension has double that. It has 32 reference points. We're just talking about the physical reality. So you can still have a body in the fifth dimension, but a body in the fifth dimension walking around is not going to be anything like what it's like for you walking around in the third dimension. Any more than it would if you tried to, here's a 2-dimensional plane. It's actually not 2-dimensional, but imagine this is completely flat, right? And there's a being that lives in it. And the being that lives in this 2-dimensional plane can only go, there's no up or down. There's just from side to side, backwards and forwards and side to side. And they can only see that. They can't see above, below, that's it. And they don't know anything else than that. If you try to explain what it's like to live in a dimension where there's, instead of 4 reference points, there's 8 reference points, they won't be able to understand it. So basically what's happening is that I'm interacting with beings that are in higher dimensions. And, when I'm communicating to probably a 5th dimensional being, it sort of taxes my brain, and I'm able to approximate. My brain, as the communication comes in, my brain is able to approximate it and then come up with a sentence that might be somewhat close to the truth, or somewhat, accurate. But when a being shows up that's, in seventh, eighth, ninth dimension, and shows up and gives me one sentence worth of information, if we take information in the same way, like if I'm communicating to you now verbally, there are 8 points of reference. So there's 8 levels of nuance to what I'm saying that your third dimensional brain can figure out. Fifth dimensional being shows up and there's 32 points of reference. They give you one sentence, but there's a huge chunk of it that your brain, it just doesn't penetrate. But the energy gets to you. So that being that showed up and gave me the upgrade and basically gave me one sentence worth of information, which was about me, the sentence that my brain came up with was so unbelievably grandiose that, my brain just broke. And I sort of broke a little bit. So I'm still trying to absorb it. They've also told me that what's happening now between humans and higher dimensional beings is that they are communicating to us far more directly than they ever have in the past. So they're learning, what we can tolerate. They're also sort of forcing us to grow, because by communicating with us directly, we have to expand ourselves to be able to tolerate the energy, to be able to tolerate the concepts. And I think this is why for most people, when they do CE5, the majority, it seems, basically all that happens is that they see lights in the sky. It's about as far as it goes for most people. Some people do meditate with them. I'm sure I'm not the only person that's having this kind of interaction. But not a lot of people, just because they're either unable or unwilling to go there. And just to give you an example, let me read a comment from somebody. And this was in my video, What Really Happens During CE5 Extraterrestrial Contact, Real versus False. And as I've been telling you guys, the vast majority of information that you get about ETs is fundamentally completely backwards. There's a lot of conflation, there's a lot of people guessing, and then there's a lot of false information that's coming from the deep state that's trying to frighten you, make you afraid of ETs, because they know if you knew the true nature of ETs and what they, how they would give you the ability to never be manipulated again, they'd lose all their power. So they don't want you to know that. So they lie to you. But for somebody, I'm going to use some characterizations. For somebody who's immature, they can't help but feel frightened. Because it's, again, we're talking about 8 points of reference versus 32 points of reference. They can't tolerate trying to understand what ETs are. And so there are people that want to argue with me about the nature of these beings, especially when I say these beings live on higher dimensional planes, and it is impossible for a being in a higher dimension to be thinking in a predatory way towards humans. In other words, it's impossible for higher dimensional beings to be evil as we understand it. Because in order to have an evil thought, in order to have a violent thought, a thought where you want to use, consume, predate, harm somebody, psychologically, physically, this whole idea of that's so popular, but I understand where it's coming from. People who want to believe that there are these reptilian alien overlords that not only want to control you, but they actually want to feast on your entrails under the earth. And there are people out there, you can't talk them out of this. But the assumption behind that is the fear that somebody more powerful than you is going to harm you. And so when you bring in the subject of higher dimensional beings, for somebody who is spiritually unevolved, psychologically immature, or emotionally immature, or perhaps you're just young, I find this with kids in their 20s, they can't seem to get past this. They can't tolerate the thought that a higher dimensional being is incapable of wanting to cause you harm. They can't tolerate it. In fact, they'll get defensive about it and they'll want to fight with me about it. What that means is that for those people, emotionally immature, emotionally unevolved, young and immature, it means that there is a belief in the unconscious that they need to protect themselves. It's a self-preservation instinct. And they believe because they feel that they don't have the ability to protect themselves psychologically and emotionally. They believe that if they drop the fear, that somebody will come along and overpower them, abuse them, hurt them. So they think that their fear protects them. Of course, it doesn't. In the third dimension, fear serves a pretty good function. If you're out in the wilderness and a bear's, chasing after you, it's good to be afraid of the bear and try and climb the tree. It's good to get out your shotgun and protect yourself. It's good if you're in a bad part of town to have your pepper spray and to be afraid of somebody coming at you with a knife. Fear is helpful for a third dimensional being. Fear has no place in higher dimensions because it's impossible to have that. Because in order to want to harm somebody, this is the most important part, please listen. In order to want to harm somebody, you have to feel there's something lacking within you. So anybody that hurts you, anybody that abuses you, enslaves you, criticizes you, robs you, steals from you, manipulates you, cons you. In order to do that, you must have the feeling that you are at a loss. Thieves. If you're gonna steal from somebody, you have to have the feeling that you need what somebody else has. You don't have enough, so you need to steal from somebody else. So it starts from the fundamental feeling that I am not enough, I am finite, I am limited, and the universe isn't going to supply my needs. So I have to break the rules by stealing from somebody, abusing them, controlling them, whatever. So you can see this is a projection. When you believe that a higher dimensional being is going to harm you, going to consciously do you harm and steal from you your energy, your life force, or enslave you or whatever, it means that you assume that they're coming from a place where they don't have enough. And then it raises the question, what in the world would a fifth dimensional being need from you, even if they stole from each other? For instance, what would you need from a two-dimensional being? A being that could only live in some flat thing. What could you possibly need from them? They have nothing that is of any use to you whatsoever. So it doesn't make any sense to think that a fifth dimensional being wants to harm you. It would be like, even if they would want to, steal from another fifth dimensional being, not from you. You don't have anything that they want. But there's no way you can know that if you walk around with the feeling that something is missing, which most people in the third dimension feel. In the third dimension, that is one of the main properties of the third dimension, to feel isolated and to feel belittled and to feel devalued and to feel victimized. That's just part of being in the 3D. So unfortunately, people project that, and I'm going to read a comment. Based on looking at it, this guy looks like he's young, probably, a teenager or, in his 20s. I'm not going to give his name out, but and this is in response to what really happens during CE5 extraterrestrial contact. He says, well, to be honest, they could be working with other non-human or superhuman intelligences that still exist to harm. And then he comes up with some strange reasoning I don't understand. Because capabilities doesn't mean you know what to do, but capabilities does make it so you are told sooner what to do than other things. I have no idea what that means. But the feeling behind it is, again, he can't tolerate me saying. Higher dimensional beings have nothing but positive feelings for you. If they're interacting with you, by definition, it means that they have only positive feelings for you. They only want to help you because you have nothing that they need. If they were selfish, they would spend as much time thinking about you as you would think about somebody in the second dimension. They just have nothing you need. The only reason you would think about a being in the second dimension is if you had compassion, if you had positive feelings for them, if you wanted to because the only thing that would happen by interacting with a lower dimensional being is that the lower dimensional being will benefit. It's the only thing that comes from that. The lower dimensional being is the recipient of a beneficial interaction. It's a one-way deal. You can't give anything to them that they need. Nothing. And I'm telling you all of this also because I think about this all the time, because when I interact with them, that's what happens. What happens is they give stuff to me and I have no means to give anything to them other than, whatever gratitude I may have. But, they keep encouraging me to say, just, let us keep giving you stuff. It is the exact opposite of what people are afraid of. It's the exact opposite of what people are projecting onto the so-called reptilians, that they're, these powerful beings that are coming to feast off of you. It's the exact opposite. The only thing they want to do is give. That's it. And that's the only thing they can do. And if they stop wanting to give you anything, they would stop interacting with us. But I'm sitting here telling you that ever since that first successful CE5, all they've done is give to me, and if I let them, they would give me energy 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I've had to ask them to tone it down because it's just so freaky and weird sometimes. It's like I just don't get what is happening. When I get into my 3D state, I get kind of paranoid and I go, what is happening? So I'm working out how that works. But when I do the interdimensional meditation, I go and interact with them. The only thing that they do is they just give. Now, I'm avoiding what I say in the title here, which is we would call it love. I don't know what they call it, but we call it love. For us, 3D, when we love somebody in the 3D, it's a big deal. We don't say that. I remember as a kid, I had some friends who were they were from Argentina. And he was saying, you know, and they have a different culture. And he was saying, yeah, I love my friend. And then I said, oh, do you love me too? And he says, no, I don't love you. And he didn't realize he was being hurtful. He was just saying that the connection that he had with his friend that he's known all his life, by the way, it wasn't sexual. It was so close that it was like a family relationship, and he loved him. But he said, no, I don't love you. And he didn't mean he didn't like me. He just was saying that I don't have that kind of commitment with you where we're like brothers. So when we choose to love somebody in the third dimension, it's a big deal. So liking somebody, having compassion for somebody, having empathy for somebody, wishing somebody well, is not the same for us as saying, I love you. Whether it's a family member or a friend or a spouse, it's a big deal. But for a higher dimensional being, remember there's not 8 points of reference, but at least 32 points of reference. It means that their positive feeling for you is not going to be like twice as much, right? It's going to be a lot more. It's going to be exponential. For them just to have a positive feeling for you, if they share, if they, you know, the equivalent of, if they look at you and smile at you, it would be the equivalent of you receiving 1,000 times concentrated human love. See where I'm going with this? So higher dimensional beings are incapable of wanting to harm you because they can't have a third dimensional intention. It's impossible. They live in a higher dimension. When they have a positive feeling for you, even if it's what we would consider to be mild, when you experience it, it's not going to be in three-dimensional reference. It's going to be in fifth-dimensional reference, which means it's going to be exponentially larger than what you're capable of understanding. So one of the end results of getting a direct experience of these higher dimensional beings is that the love is overwhelming. Now, many people will say, I haven't felt that. And if you ask them, if you're doing CE5 and you don't get that experience, ask them, why don't I feel the love as intensely as Mahadeva is talking about? You're going to get a response similar to, we can't because you won't let us. If you were able to let us, we would let you feel that. So they do their best to communicate with you. In fact, this this last energy upgrade, I think they overestimated my ability to handle what came to me, because afterwards, and I was like kind of limping around, sparks coming out of my ears, and they came later and they said, "Oh, sorry, we didn't realize that we were going to we were going to blow your circuits there." But the point is that when you feel the love from them, it is absolutely overwhelming. And it's overwhelming because it's coming from a higher dimension. I don't know what it's like to be a fifth dimensional being, sending love to another fifth dimensional being. It might be as intense for them. I don't know. I can't even begin to fathom what being in the fifth dimension is. Not only physically, but energetically, psychologically. It's far beyond what we can handle. And I'll shut up with this and open it up to questions. But again, I'm starting to understand that when they communicate to me, there's probably 90% of it doesn't get through. It just sort of bounces off my head, and my brain creates a thought, translates into, my thoughts and my language, and the vast majority of the communication probably just doesn't get through. And I think that's what happened this last time. The other thing about it is that when they communicate to you, here's how you know you're talking to a higher dimensional being. They will only communicate to you about you. They will only seek to show you your true spiritual essence. And your experience will be that they will be giving you unnecessary compliments. They will be complimenting you, and you will feel like it's just, like nobody has ever talked to you that way. Nobody has ever communicated to you that way. At least that's my experience. That may say something about me based on my childhood, but it's going to be along those lines. They will give you something. Maybe they'll, one of my students talked about the ET took him up to the moon and said it looks different from up here. And he was able to think and process his emotions more clearly. If he's listening, he knows who he is. But that was something for him specifically. They will never talk about themselves because it would be a complete waste of time. You wouldn't be able to comprehend anything about them. So it's incredibly selfless. They never do anything in the third dimension from a selfish perspective. Never. So this is why the vast majority of everything that you hear in the ufology community is just complete nonsense. Especially when you hear about evil aliens or you hear about evil reptilians. Whatever reptilians are, if they exist, they're not ETs. And whenever you hear about, like there's good aliens and bad aliens and there's an intergalactic war, that's all nonsense. All of it. Because anybody who talks like that is talking from the third dimension and does not understand just the physics of it. It's impossible for a higher dimensional being to interact on a three-dimensional level. All right, with that, I will open it up to questions and feelings if you have any. And again, if you have a question, write the word question in all caps and then just write your question. Let's see what we got here. Thundra says hello. thundra.thunderwizard.com is her website. Thundra.thunderwizard.com. She's one of my Vedic astrologers. If you want to understand, for instance, how you come across to other people, not how you think you come across, but how you actually come across, and how you can use that to create wealth for yourself, she will have an answer for you. Same with Vincent.thunderwizard.com. He is also one of my Vedic astrologers. Same thing. He will know how to, and what we're talking about is the Aruda. It's just one of the things that they will be able to tell you about that you won't find in most other, even Vedic astrology readings. You won't find it. You certainly won't find it in Western astrology. Tony M7, welcome to the channel. If you have a question, what is it that I want you to do? I want you to write the word question in all caps. Why? So that I'll see it. He says, is there some spiritual connections whenever you're in a building with a group of people, friends, family, and you put them in a nervous state? It's a really strange question. Tony, you're new to the channel, yes? I can tell. So, what you're not giving me in that question is that this is about you, right? I want to hear from you. So in other words, if you're the guy that makes people uncomfortable, I want you to share from your emotional perspective the question. So try to personalize the question more. Then I'll be more able to help you. Right now it's too intellectual, it's too third person, and any answer I give you is not beneficial for you. So do me a favor, make it a little more personal and I'll try and help you. And write the word question in all caps so that I see it. Vincent.thunderwizard.com. Honest feeling. I feel emotionally raw from doing my step work. Working steps 2 and 3 is giving me a lot of self-acceptance, hope, and relief. It's painful, but simultaneously healing. Good for you. I'm happy to hear that you're working your steps. 12 steps are easily the most healing form of how you can retool and heal your own. I'm getting so stoned right now from all this talk. Helps you to reformat your hard drive of your brain. 12 steps, best way to do it. Let's see, looking for the questions. John Lara, if you're new to the channel, again, if you have a question, look beneath your question. You'll see somebody, Agent of the Universe, wrote the word question in all caps. Do that so that I know you're asking a question. You say, what is usual lifespan for a higher dimensional being? How the hell am I supposed to know? First off, how could I possibly know that? And how do you know that there is a lifespan? Second, how does that information help you? I can tell you're new to the channel because you're asking very superficial questions that don't really mean a whole lot to your life. And I really want you to share with me questions that will help you live a better life, not just random questions you'd ask somebody at a bar. Hey, did you see the game? What's the weather like? How long do you think higher dimensional beings live? That kind of question doesn't benefit you, doesn't help you. Go deeper. Those are the kind of questions I want. But to answer your question, I have no idea, no clue. Agent of the Universe question, do I need to get a ham radio to start communicating with them? No. I feel like I'm going nuts and being isolated. A lot of positive, neutral, and negative feelings flood me at once. Yeah, so you're going to, Agent of the Universe, I know a little bit about you. So I know a little bit about what you're dealing with. And one of the things that's going to happen, anybody who interacts with a higher dimensional being, is you are going to bump into your limitations. So you're feeling a more concentrated, intense experience of what you go through all the time with everybody. I don't know you, but I know enough about you to know that you misinterpret sometimes what people say, right? You also catastrophize, right? You also project. You also turn things into black and white. Those are all ways of separating and isolating and, all that. And what did you just say? You said, when you do CE5, you said, I feel like I'm going nuts. Being isolated, a lot of positive, neutral, and negative feelings flood me at once. So I'm going to guess that those feelings are your reactions to their presence and their communication. So, ham radio, in case you don't know. If you haven't, go and watch my video. I just made a video not too long ago about how I became an extraterrestrial. And you can see my first 3 CE5 sessions, in case you don't know what I'm talking about. CE5. The letter C, the letter E, the number 5, protocols. It means human-initiated contact with extraterrestrials. I recommend everybody do it in order to destroy the cabal. Every time you do that, you take away a little bit of their energy. So,
channel mode.
This is a handheld ham radio, which is what he's talking about. You don't need this to communicate. This is only basically in the beginning. Because what will happen is they'll show up and you won't be able to detect it. Because you're not used to detecting anything beyond 3D. You might have a feeling, you might have an experience, you might even get an intuition, but your instinct will be to gaslight yourself out of it. You'll think it's just your brain. That happened to me the first 2 times, even though they communicated. Now, they don't talk to you on the ham radio. What they do is they will take over the ham radio and it'll start to make a bunch of noises, a bunch of staticky noises that it's impossible for it to do. And the only reason for that is so that you have a 3D proof that something paranormal is happening. That's all that is. It's just like seeing a spaceship in the sky or a light in the sky that's impossible. It's moving. That's not a plane. Then you know you're dealing with something paranormal. It's just to open your brain to let you know that they exist. But they won't communicate with you. What happened to me during the first, I'm here in Florida, and we just had count them, two hurricanes back to back. And during the first one, which was the Category 5, I was scared out of my mind, and I didn't have any power. And I had my ham radio because of the CE5, and I turned it on to listen to the FM radio to see what was going on, and they were letting me know that they were here. But they were only doing that because it was an emergency and because I was flipping out. And they just wanted me to know that they were there with me and they knew what was going on. And at one point I said, you're here. And then for yes. And then I said, oh, cool. Can I ask questions? Silence. I said, I'm going to take that to mean that I can't ask you questions. That meant yes. And then I repeated it. I said, okay, I better just take that at face value. So you're not going to be able to use that to communicate unless it's a really extreme situation. Dr. Greer talks about using it to ask yes or no questions to an ET, but it was it was during a huge CE5 event, and it was a watershed event that, in fact, one of them, the guy that he was able to have the back and forth was the middle guy, which, by the way, that picture was taken, it was just a light, it was just an orb. They didn't see anybody in it, but they took a picture of it, and when they looked at it, they could see that there was a being in there. So he was projecting himself into the light to be seen on in the photograph. But that's a watershed event. They knew that was going to be something that a lot of people were going to experience. So they do what they have to prove to you in the third dimension that they exist. But once they've achieved that, they don't do that. So to answer your question, no, agent of the universe, you're coming from a place of panic and desperation. And this is all I can tell you is that you're going to have to meditate through it. Don't respond from extremes. Don't respond from desperation. You're just going to have to learn how to calm yourself and go deep within and get into a calm state to be able to interpret it. And that is your lesson in this life based on the things that I know about you that you have to deal with. So NM, question. I see here that you've written everything in all caps. So I appreciate the gesture, but I don't want you to yell at me. I just, as you look beneath you and above you, you say, it's just the word question so that I see it. I appreciate it. So from now on, you don't have to scream at me. I just want to see that first word question. You say, how does the paranormal play into this concept? Well, so NM, welcome to the channel. I can tell by your question that you have a very generalized version of paranormal. Because paranormal, the word's paranormal, it's two words. Paranormal simply means beyond normal. So anything that is beyond normal is paranormal. But that could mean anything. That could mean somebody having telekinetic ability. It could mean a ghost. It could mean a demon. It could mean a timeline shift. So obviously, beings from a higher dimension interacting with the third dimension, by definition, is paranormal. So how does the paranormal play into it? It is a paranormal. It's not the same. There are times where you can see there are, places that have strange energies where timelines will shift and dimensions will become fluid. And in those situations, you will see things like, werewolves and ETs flying overhead and ghosts. And all that means is that there's a hole in the dimensions and all kinds of things are coming through. And a lot of people conflate ETs with the paranormal. Now, from my perspective, it's not paranormal at all. But that's only because, I have an intimate experience with it on a daily basis. And I know that on the other side of whatever paranormal experience I have with ETs, I know that there's an actual person on the other end of it. An actual person with a physical body. He just happens, or she happens to live in a higher dimension. So it doesn't strike me that way. I mean, in the beginning, I was afraid of them. And in the beginning, I was afraid they were going to appear in the house and, all kinds of things that you think about and relate to ghosts, until I started realizing, no, they're on a completely other dimensional level. They don't work like that. They're just people. They just happen to be people on a higher dimension. That's it. So I really wish, I really, really, really wish that the ufology community would stop conflating extraterrestrials with the paranormal, because this is the problem. Just by the fact that people are in 3D, they're going to project and conflate and create a bunch of confusion. So they're two totally different things, and this is coming from somebody who used to be an exorcist. So I'm here to tell you that demons are a totally different thing, and they're not from another dimension. Demons are not from another dimension. They are part of the third dimension. Ghosts are not from another dimension. They are part of the third dimension. So even though they're paranormal, meaning they operate differently than what we're used to based on what we can see with our 5 3D physical senses, they still exist in the third dimension. So the extraterrestrials are on a whole other level of different stuff. And while it's paranormal, it has nothing. It's not spooky or weird. There's a whole, what ghosts are and what demons are is a whole other subject. But I appreciate the question. I invite you to watch more of my channel and learn more about what this really is. Timothy Zoll, question. If there is time, is it possible to have a group meditation? Thank you for the question. I encourage you to keep asking me. But as I said, no. I've fried some circuits because I had an energy upgrade and I need to rest and heal from that. So I'm, and when I do these live interdimensional meditations, it's energetically for me, for whatever reason, it's a huge deal. So I'm not ready for that. I appreciate that. Keep asking, and when I'm ready, I will say yes. Okay. All right. So NM, you didn't offend me. I didn't take it personally. It's just how I like to do things. I don't see any other questions. I guess we're done. So so guess what? I have audiobooks that I have just uploaded to Amazon. These are the audiobooks that I currently have available. The links for them are in the description. So if you use the links that I have there, if you're going to type them in, type them exactly as you see them here. If you capitalize or decapitalize something, then it won't work. So go to those links and you can get a free trial of Audible, and you'll get 2 free audiobooks. And I've got some more audiobooks on the way. Happiness right there is probably one of the most profound books I have. It's the first one that I wrote having to do with what I teach. And it's what turned into, that became the basis for the book, The Shamanic Secret Commandment to a Perfect Life, which I believe is probably the best book anybody can read. If you can master that book, you won't have to worry about anything in life. Wealth Shaman is also one of my first books. I think it was the first book I wrote. A lot of great meditative practices that now, looking back on it 10 years later, have a lot more validity to them than I realized at the time. And then, of course, Rune Shamanism, and my most recent up there at the top, Extraterrestrials Are Coming to Earth. Please use those links. Check out those audiobooks. And yeah, leave an honest review. All right, that's it. So if you're new to the channel, there's at least 3 or 4 people here that are new. These links are here for a reason. And this channel is not about you listening to me talk. It's a waste of your valuable time and energy if all you do is just click and listen to me talk and click off. This is about doing the work, the energy practices. For the past 30 years, I have been teaching and sharing with you secret esoteric energy practices that I now realize why I've been learning them my whole life, because they give you the ability to rise up and experience higher dimensional energies. There's a reason why I'm having such an intense, deep, continuous daily interaction with ETs. It's because for the past 30 years I've been doing what I teach you here. The 3 energetic, the triple energy science, which you won't find anywhere else. I teach you Qigong, the most powerful Qigong on the planet. I teach you Kundalini Yoga, connects you to your energy of awareness through the nervous system. And I teach you the lightning power of the heart, which is probably the most powerful energy that we have in our body that almost nobody knows. It's an energy that stays condensed and confined to itself, but ancient Taoist shamans figured out very simple movements that turn that electric energy that surrounds the heart and sends it out through the body. And if you want to be able to destroy evil, that energy is what you can use to literally fight demons with your bare hands. And so I put all those 3 energies together and I teach it to you here. If you do that, if you take the 90-day challenge, I guarantee you will have a tremendous shift. I don't know why people watch this channel and you're not subscribed. I don't get it. You're coming on here for a reason. There's something about the channel that you like, but for some reason I can't figure out, you're not subscribing. Doesn't make any sense. I wouldn't act that way. I don't know why you are. It's less than what it costs you to get a coffee every other day at Starbucks, and you can unsubscribe whenever you want. If you want to see all my books and all of my other teachings, you can go to courses.thunderwizard.com. If you want to get a rune reading or astrology reading or a career reading, you can go ahead that, of course. Yeah, okay, so I've done all the business there. Somebody threw a question. So NM, just the word question is fine. In all caps, please. Just the first one. Why is that so difficult? It's not all in all caps or none. The word question in all caps, and then the rest of it in normal. You say videos question. Do me a favor. I don't know what that means. That's a word with a question mark. Do yourself the favor and write out an entire sentence so that I know what the hell you're asking me. You want me to understand you, right? Put some effort into honoring yourself. Write out the whole sentence, please. Videos question. I have no idea what that means. Okay, are you asking me? Well, I mean, seriously. Next time you're on here, write out the whole question. It's really, I have to say, it's very annoying. It annoys me. I'll tell you why it annoys me, guys. One of the things that annoys me the most about human beings is that they undercut themselves. They sabotage themselves. People struggle with having the security within themselves to get what they want out of life. And to not write out a full question for something that you want, that is important to you, only hurts you. It wastes my time and your time because I don't know what the hell you're asking. But all you had to do was love yourself enough in that moment to write out a whole question. Then I could answer it for you and you could get your needs met. I can't meet your needs if you won't love yourself enough to actually respect yourself enough to write out a whole question with a subject, an object, and a verb, and all that. So try that next time. Oh, here we go. Question. Do you have videos we can purchase from you? Yes. I just gave you the link for it. So right here. Courses.thunderwizard.com. thunderwizard.com. Go there and you will see everything that I offer. It's what I just said. So the links are here for a reason. Please use them. Yes, I have no shortage of videos and video teachings and video packages that you can purchase. Go there and you'll see all of them. Thank you for the question. All right, so that's it. No more questions. Then I guess we're done for the evening. Thank you so much, everybody, for showing up. As always, if I've done or said anything that's been offensive or hurtful in any way, know that I love you so much that I don't care whether or not you like me or whether or not you stay subscribed. I'm only interested in helping you be the most happy, successful person you can be. And sometimes that means telling you the bitter truth, whether you like to hear it or not. So don't take it personally if I bruise your ego. If you listen to what I say, and assuming I'm coming from a right spot, then ideally it will be helpful for you. Anyway, that's it for me. I'm all done. I'm going to go and relax and get ready for bed. Thank you so much for showing up. And again, please don't forget about these. I really do need some reviews on these. And again, you'll get a free trial with 2 free audiobooks. You got nothing to lose. Go to those links, which I will have in the description as well. That's it. Thank you so much, guys. I will see you all next time.